Shalom, everybody. This is Chris with firstcenturychristianity.net. Thank you so much for giving me a few minutes out of your day. This one's a pretty short one today, and I'm asking the question, where is Easter in the Bible? And the other questions that follow. Does the Bible teach us to observe bunnies, eggs, sunrise service, or does it teach us to do something else? And since Tuesday of last week, April the 4th, our assembly and hundreds of thousands of other believers have been observing the death and resurrection of Yeshua, Jesus, the Messiah, differently than almost all Christians on the planet. On Tuesday evening, we got together to wash each other's feet and have bread and wine. On Wednesday evening, we observed Passover, including Yeshua's crucifixion. And on Thursday, we observed a holiday known as the first day of unleavened bread. On Saturday, we observed the Sabbath, which would have been the last day Yeshua was in the tomb, being resurrected after sundown on, on Shabbat. Now, for most Christians, this pattern is completely foreign. For most people, they have no idea what we're doing. They have no idea why we're doing it. They think we're being Jewish or something to that effect. But guess what, brothers and sisters? Yeshua told us explicitly to wash each other's feet and have bread and wine on a very specific night, the night he was betrayed. He did that because the next night was Passover and he was going to be in the tomb the following night. He knew that. And then they continue on to follow the holy days. And these holy days teach us some more stuff. But today I'm going to be very basic because I want to just come at this like the kids that we are. Paul repeats the command that Yeshua gave. He says, on the night he was betrayed, he took bread. On the night he was betrayed, he took the wine. Paul repeats that in 1 Corinthians 11. Now, for perspective, 1 Corinthians 11 was written maybe 20 years after Yeshua was ascended, after his death and resurrection and ascension. Remember that the church, for lack of a better word, grew up on Pentecost in Acts 2. Then when Paul becomes an apostle is quite a long time later because the church grew and he had something to persecute. Then he has his conversion. Then he goes out to the Western world to teach the Gentiles, and then he writes them letters. Very, very long time has passed. So when he writes to them and says, on the night he was betrayed, he took the cup, they had been taught to do that. Paul also writes to keep the feast. The book of Acts references the fast being the Day of Atonement. So if you know what to look for, the New Testament does tell us how the early Christians worshipped. And that included the Gentiles and the Jews. But you might be wondering, how did we get here? How did we get from the traditional mainstream Christianity and its practices to a theological place where our worship is just so much different than the rest of the world? Why did we do that? Well, we adopted the biblical practices. We started asking questions about the worship activities that we had been taught from kids. I know that Christianity likes to teach that works don't matter, but then they teach that works do matter. So let's just set the table with that. Is works absolutely matter because they show you who you love. We asked questions like, where is Easter in the Bible? What do bunnies have to do with the death and resurrection of the Messiah? What do dyed eggs have to do with the death and resurrection of the Messiah? What does searching for dyed eggs have to do with the Messiah? Why are we emphasizing Sunday morning services instead of the night he was betrayed, what he told us to do? Why are we eating ham in honor of the Jewish Messiah? And on and on and on. The question keeps going. And when you love God and his Son, how you worship them matters. If you love someone, won't you want to do what they want you to do? And Yahweh is our Father in heaven. Yeshua is his Son, and Yeshua showed Yahweh his love by living a perfect sinless life and dying innocently on the cross. That's our pattern. Our pattern is to follow Yeshua and to live the way he did, to do the things he did. When you're raising children and they obey you, particularly after periods of disobedience, doesn't that make you feel good? Isn't that the kid saying, Dad, Mom, I love you. I'm going to do what you say? Because the way we got to our worship practices, the way we got to our faith, was to take a very basic childlike approach to the faith once delivered. Does the Bible tell us how to worship God? And am I doing that? Are the practices that I'm doing meshing with what's been written? Am I doing what my Father in heaven wants me to do? Well, you start with the first four of the Ten Commandments. You shall have no other God before him. You have no idols. You don't take the name of Yahweh in vain, and you keep the Sabbath. This is how he introduced himself to the mixed multitude at Mount Sinai, and he does not change. When they came out of Egypt, it wasn't just Israelites. Hundreds of thousands of people from all over the world realized that Egypt's gods were false. Hebrew God was real. So they left with the Hebrew people, and there was a mixed multitude at Mount Sinai who immediately adopted the worship that Yahweh told them to do. So you start with the Ten Commandments, all 10 of them, and then you work from there. So these practices, these bunnies and these eggs and this sunrise service, brothers and sisters, those come from other religions, ancient pagan religions. Yahweh doesn't just want us to do what he wants us to do. He very much is a jealous Elohim, and he does not want us to do what the false gods tell us to do. So we put the practices of mainstream Christianity to the test. We searched the scriptures to see if they were true, and they failed the test. While searching, we found there actually are ways that Yahweh wants to be worshipped. And through the shed blood of his resurrected Son, we have been adopted into the family of Yahweh and have decided to worship him on his terms, just as Yeshua did, to the point of death. Now, the day that Yeshua was resurrected is a holy day in the Bible. It's called the Day of First Fruits. It falls on the first day of the week during Passover every year. And it's the day that the high priest waves the offering of the best of the land. Yeshua is the best that Yahweh had to offer. He gave us his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him will not perish but have eternal life. So for us, that's the pattern. We follow Yahweh's first fruits, his Son Yeshua. We follow him so that we can follow him in glory and we can be resurrected to live and reign with Yahweh and his Son for eternity. Thank you so much for listening. May Yahweh bless you and keep you in the name of his Son Yeshua. Please drop by firstcenturychristianity.net and enjoy the rest of the teachings and join us on this journey to get to the faith once delivered. Shalom.